Hello, this is Dr. Stephen R. Hiatt. I'm going to be your instructor for this course, and I'd like to give you my own personal introduction. I was born in North Carolina, and I was born December 11th, 1945, so I'm kind of an older guy. The town I was born in is named Mount Airy, North Carolina. This is the main street. Mount Airy is noted for two famous things. That first one is we have the largest open-faced granite quarry in the world. And secondly, we are the home of Andy Griffith. I went to Mount Airy High School, where I graduated in 1964. We were called the Granite Bears after the granite quarry. In high school, I played football. I played offensive guard, defensive end. I was a guard on the basketball team through the 10th grade. I played on the baseball team as a freshman, and later when we started a track team, I was on the track team running the 400 meters. Not very fast, but I was on the team. I was also very interested in girls, and here is a picture of me dressed for a prom. After graduating from high school, I moved to Utah to go to college. I attended Brigham Young University, which is owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which I'm a member. I received a bachelor's degree in sociology with a minor in German. So, after my freshman year, before going back to college, I went to Germany to serve as a missionary for my church. So, first I had 3 months of training in what was called the language training mission, 3 months of intensive German training, and I'm the second guy on the left. Here is a picture of me in Heidelberg. I'm the guy in the white shirt. Here's a picture of me in a town called Offenbach, which is near Frankfurt. There I am in Kassel, Germany. And I also served in Wiesbaden and Bitburg and Trier. So we were called the West German Mission with headquarters in Frankfurt. I became fluent in German. This is when we still had East Germany behind the Iron Curtain, the Berlin Wall. After the completion of my mission, I did a 2-week tour of Europe. I visited cities in Germany that I hadn't been to, such as Berlin and Hamburg. I also went to Holland or the Netherlands, England, France, and Belgium. I also have gone to Luxembourg. Here's a picture of the Berlin Wall that was still up at that time that I saw. And I actually went on the other side and walked around by myself. Here's a picture of Brussels, Belgium. Picture of the Eiffel Tower when I visited in Paris, Anne Frank House in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Denmark. Forgot to mention, that I visited Denmark, and London, England, where I saw the changing of the guards at Buckingham Palace, as well as other things. And one other foreign country, to me it was, being North Carolina, was New York City, where I stayed in the YMCA. After my time coming back from Germany, I stayed in North Carolina for about a month, and then I returned to Utah to continue my studies. There I met my future wife, Darlene, at Brigham Young University, and about 6 months after returning, we were married in June of 1968. There's a picture of my lovely bride, Darlene, when she was 20 years old and I was 22 when we got married. We were married in the Salt Lake Temple on June 7th, 1968. That's how we looked as a young couple. So, after graduating from college, the Vietnam War was going on, and rather than getting drafted, I joined the Air Force and was sent to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. After that, I was sent to Monterey, California, where it was decided by the military that I would become a linguist. I thought that was great since I spoke German, but it turned out they had other plans. They decided I would be a Russian linguist. So I studied Russian at the Presidio Monterey for 9 months and learned Russian. There's a picture of me in Monterey in my 1970s view. Our first child was born while I was stationed at Monterey, Adam. He was born in 1970. And this is a picture of him 2 years later in Anchorage, Alaska. After completing language school, I was sent back to Texas to Goodfellow Air Force Base. I spent 3 months there being trained by the security service, which really worked under the control of the National Security Agency, who was my operational boss while I was in the Air Force. After completing that school, I was sent to Anchorage, Alaska, to Elmendorf Air Force Base, where I spent 13 months. Here's a picture of me when I was young and thin in Alaska. Our second son, Seth, was born in Alaska. I was then going to be transferred out of Alaska, and so I drove my wife, and it was going to be an unaccompanied tour, so I drove my wife and my 2 children down the Alaska Highway in a Ford Pinto with 4 studded tires, studded snow tires. This highway at that time was only about halfway paved, and it was a lot of gravel. I did run off the road once and had to wait 3 days to get a new timing belt replaced because it was packed into the snow. It was quite an adventure. So I was sent then to Sinop, Turkey. Here's an old map showing Sinop. You'll notice it's on the Black Sea right across from Crimea. And there is where it is located. This is the way it looks from the end of that peninsula looking back down on the town. This is what downtown Sinop looked like, a real paradise, you might say. Town of about 20,000. We eventually moved into this apartment. I was allowed, after all, to bring my wife to join me after about a month and a half. I made those arrangements. We lived in this apartment. I'm wearing a Turkish suit, and that's my son, Adam, with me there. So after completing my tour in Turkey, I was transferred back to Fort Meade, Maryland, where our third son was born. He was actually not born at Fort Meade. He was born at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, but we were stationed at Fort Meade. I worked at the NSA Annex at the Baltimore-Washington International Airport. This is a bird's eye view. After getting released from the Air Force, I moved to Mesa, Arizona, and there I worked on getting an MBA degree in the evenings while working during the daytime for Shortstop Markets. I was the first manager of their first store and had the job of training new managers and personnel and then opening another store. I opened 8 different stores for them, but it was a family-owned business and I wasn't in the family. So then I went to work for Associated Grocers as a health and beauty aids buyer and worked for there for a little over a year. In the meantime, I was working on getting a Master of Business Administration from Arizona State University. So I finished that and then decided that I'd rather teach than work for a living. So I decided to get a PhD. I taught part-time for several different colleges, Golden Gate University, Park University, or it was the Park College at the time, and others, Thunderbird Graduate School of International Business, and also a graduate assistant at Arizona State because I had a family to support. All 3 of my daughters were born in Arizona, Joy, Kathy, and Diana. If you're keeping count, that's now 6 children. When I got everything except my dissertation done, I moved to Nebraska, where I took my first full-time teaching job. And it was then called Kearney State College. It's now the University of Nebraska at Kearney. It was a great place to live, and we loved it, but I had to go back to Arizona for a year to get my dissertation rolling better, and then we moved back to Nebraska, where we then stayed. Our last child, Joshua, was born in Kearney, Nebraska, 1 month after I finished my PhD. He was born in 1984, so now we had 7 children. So by 1984, this is how our family looked. The family circle was finally complete. And that's how we looked in 1987. Then I went to the AACSB Information Systems Institute at the University of Maryland to pick up an additional specialty that was in teaching information systems, as well as my PhD, which was in management with supplementary fields in marketing and international business. So then I could teach all 3 of those areas, plus now information systems. I interviewed for several jobs in the Academy of Management meeting in Chicago and ended up taking a job back in North Carolina. It was my second permanent faculty position in 1987, where I began teaching for Catawba College. So you can see all the states that I've listed in yellow, states I've lived in. Those that are in pink are other states that I've visited, which is almost every state. I've also visited Canada and Mexico, as well as those states, those countries in Europe that I mentioned earlier. Some practical experience. I've been a consultant and workshop leader to over 100 different companies, a facilitator to numerous strategic planning retreats, author of numerous instructor manuals, study guides, test banks, and was appointed to the National Advisory Board for Innovative Technology for Teaching of Business by Cengage Publishing. I spent 6 years and 2 months as the Bishop of the Salisbury Ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is like being the pastor, only it was a non-paid position, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm no longer in that position, but still very active in my church. For our 50th wedding anniversary, we took a trip to London and Paris in the summer of 2018, courtesy of our children, especially one of our sons who did a lot of traveling and had a lot of air miles, as well as points at Marriott hotels. So we went to London right during the time when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were getting married in May of 2018. So it was pretty crowded. We got to see the sights. We rode on the tube or the subway all over London. Got to know it pretty well. Enjoyed that experience. We stayed in an Airbnb. This is the apartment we stayed in, and that was Leslie, our host at the Airbnb, in a typical London flat. We got to see a lot of sights. Here's just a couple of them. Here is the Tower of London. This is my wife when we went inside with a couple of the local ladies dressed up in period costumes. We got to see the changing of the guards at Buckingham Palace. And then we decided it was time to go to Paris after about 4 or 5 days. This is the Eurorail station in London. We took the Eurorail under the English Channel to Paris. And then we enjoyed our visit in Paris. First thing we did was took a riverboat tour on the Seine where they point out all the sights. This is my wife in front of the Arc de Triomphe, which we climbed up. About did me in to climb to the top because I was not in very good shape, but we got to see quite a view from there. Of course, we went to the Eiffel Tower. Luckily, they had an elevator there, and we enjoyed that. We went to the Louvre Museum, saw a lot of the sights there. We walked everywhere. I wear a Fitbit, and I did over 20,000 steps every day and was really tired. So when we were leaving the Louvre Museum, I carelessly put my wallet in my front right pocket instead of, I was wearing cargo pants instead of a lower pocket, which had Velcro. And when we were riding on the metro back to our hotel, a pickpocket stole my wallet. I had a special big enough wallet that had my not only my money and my credit cards, but also my passport in it. Here is the police report that we filed for that. Didn't do much good. They couldn't get the guys, but I right away canceled all my credit cards. All they got was maybe 150 euros that I had in my wallet, but I didn't have a passport. I had to go back to the American Embassy, and using only a business card that I had showing I taught for Catawba College, they were able to, using information they gathered from me, including my social security number and other personal data, to replace my passport, and I was lucky to do that, but I was very cautious about what I did in Paris for the rest of that time. So we finally left Paris, and this is the Paris airport, beautiful airport, and ended that great adventure for our 50th wedding anniversary in 2018. This is the same year, 2018. This is a family reunion we had. This was in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm in the middle. My wife is behind me, surrounded by our 7 kids and spouses and grandchildren. So that's the end, and I hope you enjoy learning a little bit about me.